We're back with Season 1, Episode 7, Pond Hockey. Now, after the highs of last week, where we got to see some of the former Ducks from the 90s reunite with Gordon Bombay, we're kind of back to the show insulting our intelligence a bit. I'm not gonna lie, this episode was pretty cringe. You can see that there's a foundation of a show here that probably would have been pretty good if put together properly. Instead, we have moments that feel non-genuine, issues that get resolved in just a couple of minutes of time, and one of my biggest gripes are just having players spontaneously become adequate or even above average at the game of hockey. I don't know, maybe that's more of a personal issue. Maybe I'm trying to find a little too much realism in a Disney Plus show. But to me that seems fair. I'm trying to compare these to the original movies, and while they did have some hokiness, they were always kind of grounded in a way where you kind of thought maybe it would be believable. And those were standalone movies where issues would be resolved relatively quickly. Every one of those movies is filled with a drama conflict where it does get resolved within 10 to 15 minutes of it actually occurring. But you understand that. Movies have roughly 90 minutes to get their complete story told. Game Changers is a TV show. These manufactured dramatic moments could be extended over the course of a couple of episodes where you actually get to feel the conflict and the drama really seep in and start to see how it affects everybody. When you have drama and it's resolved within literally 5 minutes of the episode, was it really even worth it? Did it actually move these characters and the plot forward in any kind of way? But let's go ahead and get into the recap of this episode. We cut to the Don't Bother still kind of dealing with the fact that they feel betrayed by what Evan did in the very last episode. Sam seems to be taking this particularly hard. Evan and Alex show up, and Evan is once again trying to apologize and explain to them what actually happened. Again, the Don't Bothers aren't buying this. They feel completely betrayed and don't really want to deal with Evan at this point. Alex decides to call a players-only meeting where she locks the team in the locker room. She's hoping everybody will be able to say their piece and they'll be able to work out any kind of conflicts that they have. This seems to only make things worse, though. Everybody starts to yell at each other over little things that have happened over the course of the show so far. And again, we see Sam really taking this the hardest. He doesn't seem to want to have anything to do with the team right now. We see Alex and Bombay outside of the door listening to what's happening. Alex feels the need to go in there and make everybody feel better. Bombay is on the side of just letting the players handle it. We see Bombay walk away. The Don't Bothers continue to yell at each other, so Alex decides to go back into the room to see if she can actually settle this conflict. Suddenly the lights go out. We cut to Alex, who's with Bombay as he's going through the fuse box trying to get the power back on. His concern is obviously if he doesn't get the power back on in time, the ice will melt. So Bombay has the idea of taking the team to an ice pond outside. He said this is where he learned to skate. Alex is really hesitant with all of this. Her motherly instincts tell her that this is dangerous and the kids could fall through the ice. Bombay assures her that everything will be okay. Bombay decides to have the kids play tag. Obviously this is a bit of a team building exercise here. Everybody seems to join in and is having fun except for Sam. He's sitting off to the side by himself. After that, we see the Don't Bothers in their full hockey gear. They seem to actually be doing some hockey drills here. So this is the very first practice where it seems like they're actually being taught something relevant. Bombay even pulls out the old passing drill, but instead of using eggs, he has them use their phones, since those phones are the most valuable things to those children. After the practice is over, we're once again reminded that the team is still mad at Evan. We're supposed to just ignore the last 5 minutes or so where they were all practicing and having fun, and this really comes off very strange. Maybe it's just the acting, maybe it's just the script, but nobody actually seems to be mad at Evan. It comes across as really hokey and not really believable. But Evan decides to rip the C off of his jersey and says that he won't wear it until he's earned it again. The team decides that they don't need a captain right now, and this seems to smooth everything over. So we're roughly 10 minutes into this episode, and everybody's okay with Evan again. Again, there was no real conflict here. There was nothing that really dragged over the course of a couple of episodes, or even a game or so. The conflict that was created by Evan going to the Ducks practice never actually resulted in any kind of negative issues. The team was just mad at him for a few minutes. The only two people that still seem to have a problem are Sam and Sophie. So we cut to the team eating pizza and Sophie's doing her homework. Evan tries to talk to her, but she's still very mad at him. Sophie is still mad at Evan because she felt like they were more than friends. So obviously there's some budding romance here. So it's not so much what he did, it's the fact that he didn't come to her and tell her what was happening first. She felt like she had the kind of relationship with Evan where they could tell each other anything. Now we've seen this hinted in a couple of episodes from time to time, but nothing that would really make you think that they were on this kind of level. I mean, sure, they were friendly, but I didn't think they were that friendly. Obviously, there was a little bit of hints of some crushes here and there, but nothing this deep. And when I say deep, it's still kind of shallow. Mostly because, once again, this is going to be a conflict that's resolved relatively quickly. We cut back to another don't bothers practice on the pond. Bombay's actually going to fix Kube here. We've all seen Kube not move very much in net. He claims that that's as fast as he can move. So Bombay tricks him into thinking the ice is breaking underneath him, and he needs to skate as fast as he can to get off the ice. Obviously, he does that. So this gives Kube the confidence to be able to move around in net. Somehow this turns him into an above-average butterfly goalie. And this was a silly moment to me. I'm just not sure that Kube learning that he can actually move his feet is going to give him the kind of skill set to be able to play goalie at this level. But for some reason, he knows how to expertly move his pads in the butterfly formation. I just wish there was a little bit more here, because honestly, this was a little bit insulting to my intelligence. I mean, maybe a 7-year-old kid would be fine with it, but honestly, I think any kind of 7-year-old that's enamored with hockey would know how hard that technique is. Or at least they would have some kind of understanding to know that it would take a little bit more than learning how to move your feet to be able to perform these moves as a goalie. But I don't know, maybe I'm just nitpicking. But these are the kind of things that bothered me. Obviously, we're trying to parallel this with Goldberg a little bit. Goldberg's problem was that he was afraid of the puck. And he should have been. He wasn't very well protected in net. I'm sure when he got hit with the puck, it hurt. And so once Bombay was able to get him some suitable gear, he felt confident that he could move around in net and be able to stop the puck. And we also didn't see Goldberg have this enormous skill set once he learned that he could actually take a hit from a puck. He wasn't really moving around with the kind of efficiency that we're seeing Kube move around here. Goldberg was still a relatively stationary goalie. Now, that was a completely different goalie style. He was a stand-up goalie. And so to me, it made it a little bit more believable. Kube learning that he can actually move around in net should not have instantly turned him into some great butterfly goalie. I don't know, I just think that's odd. And I think these are moments where we don't even really need to see much to believe it. I think maybe just like a 10-second scene of him actually being shown how to move around on the ice would have been enough for me. Like, okay, cool. We know that he's played hockey video games, so maybe he understands technique, but he's never actually done it. So maybe just having a brief scene with Bombay showing him how to move from post to post and how to get down on his knees would have been enough for me. It's not a lot, but it is something. So let's move on to the next scene. So another scene between Alex and her boss, Stephanie. Stephanie wants her to do something for her, but obviously she knows that she has to get to coaching her team. Alex lets her know that she's free because Bombay is taking over the team from her. She's worried that she's too scared and that she's holding the kids back. Stephanie actually gives her some pretty good advice here. She needs to embrace the fear and run towards it. So we see Alex show back up to the practice. She gives the kids blindfolds and she wants them to be able to play with the blindfolds on. This is just a disaster. And it would have just been comical if it wasn't actually used later on in the show in a way that made absolutely no sense, but we'll get to that. It should be noted here that Sam didn't actually show up to this practice. Kube gets a text from Sam, and Sam says that he's quitting and he's on his way to clear out his locker. We cut to Evan, Nick, and Kube trying to stop Sam from cleaning out his locker. Sam's issue here is that he's never been a part of a team because nobody's ever wanted his skill sets. He's never felt wanted by anybody. And so when Evan asked him to join the team, he felt wanted for the first time. So when Evan made the decision to go try out for the Ducks, this really hurt Sam because he felt like nobody actually wanted him. And this is once again an issue with this show. This would have been another good conflict that needed to simmer for a couple of episodes. Maybe even having Sam miss a game or two. But that's not what happens here. Evan calls Sam his X Factor, and that seems to be enough for Sam to be able to turn around his attitude. It's so contrived and it's not genuine at all. It went from being a pretty good reason to him wanting to quit a team to there being no real reason for him to stay on the team, other than the fact that Evan called him the X Factor. And that was good enough? I just don't understand the writing here. Literally 1 minute he wants to quit, and then the very next minute he just gets called the X Factor, and now he wants to stay on the team because that sounds pretty cool. The only thing I can keep saying is that I feel like it's insulting. And I think it's insulting to adults watching. I think it's insulting to children watching. This is the kind of stuff that's being poorly handled by this show. And that's unfortunate because this could be handled in a way that actually creates real drama and bring you into the story. And that's been my biggest issue with this show, is that they're not actually creating a good story here. There's elements of a good story, but they're being presented in a way where it's fragmented and then resolved within 10 minutes. There's no real tension here. There's no real stakes here. It feels like a sitcom. There is an overarching plot, but it feels like these are all standalone episodes that are kind of self-contained. And that could work to some degree, but you do need kind of these overarching things that can last for at least 2 episodes, if not longer. These are the kind of things that kind of hook you for a show. These are the kind of things that have you coming back each week to watch a show. Right now, I come back to watch this show purely based on nostalgia. This is not a good show, and I don't think anybody looking at it can objectively say that this is a good show. You may enjoy the show, but that doesn't make it a good show. There's plenty of shows that I enjoy that I know are not good shows. I don't enjoy this show, but I keep watching it because of moments like last episode. And I think for people in my generation, that's what that was for. And I know overall this show isn't for me, but it's using a franchise that I love. So at least on some level, it wants me to watch. But if I was a kid, and this was my first exposure to this, I would not watch this. But then again, I've always been somebody that prefers story-driven entertainment. Even as a young child, I preferred shows that had narratives to them, that actually had multiple season arcs for stories. That's always been my kind of entertainment. And I'm really sad by this show. I didn't think it was going to be one of the greatest shows ever, but I thought it would be at least entertaining week in and week out. But let me get back to the recap. So the next scene, we cut back to the game where the Don't Bothers are taking on the Hornets. Throughout the episode, we've seen Sophie trying to take care of her knee. I think this will be a major plot point later in the season, or at least I hope it is. It's building in a way to where maybe this will get a little bit more interesting. Anyway, Evan buys her a nice compression knee brace and gives it to her. This once again smooths over any kind of tension that Evan and Sophie had with each other. So all the anger that we saw from her in the last scene is resolved. Evan tells her that she's special to him, and vice versa. So they're good to go again. No tension, no real drama, no long-lasting effects. Not even any in-game effects from this. This really should have been an episode driven by the tension between Evan and his teammates. On-ice tension would have been the best way to show this. Them not trusting him and them not giving him the puck. A little bit like the Adam Banks situation when he first joined the Ducks. They didn't trust him, so they didn't pass him the puck until they were forced to. And then once they did, they realized that he was part of the team. Nope, not with this show though. Just a quick scene to let you know everything is good. And we'll move on. Quick scene of Alex and Bombay sitting in the stands. Alex wants to know why Bombay is not coaching. Bombay lets her know that she's the actual coach, needs to go be with her team. A little bit of back and forth here, and then Alex realizes that she is the coach, blah, blah, blah. It should be noted here that we find out that Bombay's the one that actually pulled the power. He used it as an excuse for the team to get away and kind of resolve some of their issues. There was 3 or 4 stories here that all had a little bit of drama that all get resolved by the end of this episode. It's like they packed every single conflict they could think of into this episode and then resolved them almost instantly. And now for the actual game. The Don't Bothers are actually putting on a respectable performance in this game. And that makes sense because they've been taught by Gordon Bombay. The Don't Bothers managed to tie the game towards the end. Alex calls a timeout and she wants to run a special play. And this is once again one of the silliest things I've ever seen. Especially in the Mighty Ducks franchise that's filled with silly stuff, but at least somewhat believable. Alex wants them to run a play blind, and I don't know why. Because they put blindfolds on earlier, and then they all fell down because they didn't know how to skate with them, and so now they can all magically play with each other blind? What sense did this make? This was just terrible, and I hate this kind of stuff in shows like this. It's so insulting, and I don't know how else to describe it. So of course, they all close their eyes on the play, and they all pass the puck to each other blind, and then score a goal. The Don't Bothers once again get another victory from a play that came from nowhere, that wasn't practiced, that they showed absolutely no ability to be able to run previously. Where did this come from? What sense does this make? Why is this okay? And that's how the episode ends. Just some random play out of nowhere that made absolutely no sense. We all saw that them being blind was a complete disaster. And there wasn't even a hint that they were able to do this at all. Not even a small 2-second scene where they did show some competency while being blind. Just all of a sudden, they're all best friends again, and they can all play hockey blind. Guys, this is not a good show. And I know that some of you are enjoying it, and I'm genuinely happy that you are. But as somebody who grew up with this franchise and absolutely loves it, this is not the Mighty Ducks. This is something else. This is the kind of thing that we should always expect when we get reboots of franchises. This is just taking a name of a somewhat popular franchise from the 90s to try to get views. They're hoping that the nostalgia element is able to carry a show like this. And so that's why I know that it's actually targeted for people like me. And so anybody that says that this is a kid show, that's not accurate. If it was a kid show, they wouldn't have slapped the Mighty Ducks name on it. They're using that to get the viewers from that demographic. Because at this point, that's a core demographic. Those are the 18 to 35-year-olds that people actually want to target to. They may get lucky, and some children may watch this. But I don't think that's what's happening here. I think the show is 100% geared towards the adults who grew up on this franchise, and unfortunately it's not very good. And I can't recommend this show to anybody. I would tell anybody to check out episode 6 and then don't worry about anything else. This isn't the Mighty Ducks. This is Game Changers. But this review has gone on long enough. And again, I'll stick with it to see if anything changes, but I'm not very confident. The show has been fairly predictable so far, and I think it's going to keep going in a way that's not going to be very satisfying to the viewer. And believe me, I don't go into each one of these episodes wanting to hate this. I actually really wanted to like it, but I just haven't so far. But I'll continue to keep making my reviews on them. So if you like these, please continue to watch, like, subscribe, and I'll keep cranking them out. I hope today's the day that I earned your subscription. Thanks for being a part of my life, and I'll see you next time.